It is Sunday, May 11th, 2025, and on this week's edition of Sunday Sofa Time, we're talking about first-time cruise tips, Mediterranean edition.
Just like the wind, just let it pass through, just let it pass you. You do what you
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, especially to my moms. Mwah, I love you. And for everybody else out there, if you clicked on this video and you're asking yourself, who is this guy? Why does he claim to know so much about Mediterranean cruises? Well, I'm Morgan from the very unofficial travel guides. I've been making travel videos now for over 15 years of popular and not so popular tourist destinations to give you a very honest, unofficial look at what it's like to be there. And I'm also the author of 2 books about travel and life, Getting Stitches on a Cruise Ship and Places Please. They're available on Amazon now, and I have been on over 40 cruises now, and I'm gonna say about 40% of them have been Mediterranean cruises. Not only that, but I live here in Europe, and I feel like adding all that up together gives me a little bit more insight into what you might need to know or think of before your first cruise in the Mediterranean. So I've created a list here, and if you are an expert cruiser, it might be useful to stick around for this video anyways, just as a refresher and to be reminded, oh yeah, that's right, we need to do that. Or, oh yeah, we need to be sure to not do that. And for everybody else who has never cruised in the Mediterranean or maybe never cruised before, here you go. My first tip is absolutely fly into your starting port, I'm gonna say at least 2 days in advance. Listen, I know a lot of people out there watching my videos are in North America, are in the United States. I know vacation time is tricky to get, but if this is perhaps gonna be your only visit to Europe ever, then try to take as much time as you can. And in order to get acclimated to the time difference and to not begin your cruise with a major case of jet lag, try to get over here at least 2 days in advance. Also, that will give you plenty of buffer time in case there are some travel hassles, delayed flights, closed airports. You know, we've seen all these crazy things happening lately. Just give yourself the peace of mind that you have enough time to get here and you're not gonna miss the beginning of the cruise. Okay, another thing I know about my audience, because I see it in my YouTube analytics, is most of you who watch my videos are my age or older. So I mean like 29, 30, in your late 30s. That's all older than me. Of course, I'm kidding. So I just turned 51. One thing I just want to remind you about is before you take a big trip across the pond, make sure you're going to your health checkups and don't forget enough of your medications in your carry-on. And I'm going to recommend bringing an extra pair of glasses and make sure you bring enough contact lenses. Story time. Here in Germany, when you have your prescription for your eyes, you get a little card from your optometrist that says what is going on with your eyes. You know, I don't know what all the words are in English because I've never had to do this process in English. Once you get this card in Germany, you can then, of course, get contact lenses from your optometrist, but every drugstore also just has like sort of the cheap contacts that you can get if you're in a pinch or you forget yours. It's not like that in the USA, and I learned it the hard way. On one big family trip to Florida where we were there for a week and going to new theme parks every day, I just don't like to wear glasses when I'm riding roller coasters because it's so annoying. Some places let you wear the glasses, sometimes you have to leave them in the station, and it's just much more comfortable to have contact lenses in, even though I'm not really a fan of wearing contacts. But so I didn't remember to bring enough contacts to Florida, and I figured, whatever, I'll just go to CVS and buy some. Nope. You can't just buy contacts in the USA like you can here. You have to basically like get them from a doctor, I guess. I tried several ways to get my optometrist from here to send me the information I needed for them to sell me contacts in the USA, and they wouldn't do it. So make sure you have enough of your medications, some extra glasses, and contacts. Here's another thing that I can highly recommend you do before your cruise begins, and that is research where the port actually is compared to the name of the city where the cruise line says it's leaving. Mediterranean ports are not like Miami. They're not like Fort Lauderdale. A lot of these places where the ship docks is way far away from the city it's called. So for instance, if your ship supposedly starts in Venice or Rome, the ship is not actually docked in Venice or Rome. Rome is a perfect example. The port is an hour away from the city in a place called Civitavecchia. And by the way, if you are an adventurous traveler and want to take the train from Rome out to Civitavecchia, it's actually not that complicated, and I made a whole video showing you how it's done and how I did it. I'm going to try to remember to link that below. I just want to make sure that you don't make the mistake that you fly to Rome thinking, all right, so honey, when we get up tomorrow, we're just going to get in a taxi and ask them to take us down to the cruise port. That would be a very expensive mistake. Speaking of research, I also think Mediterranean cruises are worth putting a little bit more time into researching the ports because, as I mentioned, I don't know how many trips you're going to be doing to Europe, and if this is one or maybe one of the two that you're ever going to be doing, then just try to make really sure that you get the most out of your time. And if you have any special interests, that you find out how you can explore those in these ports. Of course, one great place to do this research is right here on YouTube, not only here on the Very Unofficial Travel Guides, but there are so many creators that have made videos about all these destinations. So YouTube would be one of the first places that I would recommend you start looking. And then of course, there are always the cruise sponsored excursions that will be highlights of these areas. Some of them are focused more on food, some of them are focused more on culture. But there are actually other ways in addition to the cruise sponsored excursions. Websites like Get Your Guide or With Locals will offer you a lot of times basically the exact same tours for a fraction of the cost. And the only sort of downside to not taking a ship sponsored excursion is if there are any hiccups in getting back to the ship. If it's a ship-sponsored excursion, the ship is definitely going to wait for you, or the cruise line is going to be responsible for getting you to the next port. And if it's a not ship-sponsored excursion and you're late coming back to the ship,
that is going to be a problem.
And if you don't want to do a ship-sponsored excursion, and if you're a little bit weary about doing a locally organized excursion, a lot of Mediterranean ports, especially the Greek islands, are great places to sort of just get off and walk around, or take one of the hop-on, hop-off bus tours. I've talked about these in so many videos, but this is like sort of a low budget way to see a lot of these destinations and to get information about it. And you don't technically have to get off the bus at all. So also if you have problems with mobility, these are sort of a great way to get out and about and see a lot. If you do get off the ship and walk around these fascinating cities, one thing I can also recommend to you, within reason, is to explore a little bit off the beaten path. Marcus and I, we love to walk through the touristy areas, but when it comes to lunchtime, we always try to find a restaurant that's a little bit outside of the touristy areas, just because our experiences have been, not only is it a little bit more authentic and like locally catered, but it's usually also a lot cheaper. So what we tend to do is explore the touristy areas and then keep an eye on the side streets. And a lot of times you'll see like way down a couple blocks will be another cafe with tables out and friendly looking people sitting there. And we usually think that's where we're going for lunch. As mentioned though, use common sense, trust your spidey tingling. If something feels wrong, then turn around and get back to the touristy area. But I know I don't have to tell you that. Speaking of walking out and exploring on your own, you can download maps of the major cities on your phone, like Google Maps, and there are so many other different applications you can use to get around in foreign destinations. It feels good to know that in your telephone, you're going to get some help with navigation. And if you want to have internet while you're on land. Almost all cell phones that have come out within the last like 5 or 6 years will let you install an eSIM in them. That stands for electronic SIM card. There's a lot of different companies that offer these things. It's an app that you install in your phone. You have to set this up before you go, and then you buy minutes or you buy data, and it's really easy and convenient. And this is what I always do when I'm in the United States now. I just buy time on an eSIM, and then I know wherever I go, I'm going to be connected. And it just gives you a little bit more peace of mind, especially if you're exploring an area where you don't know your way around and you're maybe a little bit worried about the way back to the ship. Okay, earlier on, I talked about making sure you get your health checkups and bring all your medication. And this leads me back to another point that I think is super important, and that is travel insurance. I know this is also probably not a new subject for most of you, but your typical health insurance that you have at home is most likely not going to cover any expenses if you get sick or injured, and especially if you end up like in the hospital or have to be evacuated from the ship. I really hope that doesn't happen to you. But if it does, if you don't have travel insurance, this is going to be so amazingly expensive. You just don't want that to happen. So even though it might increase the cost of your cruise, it's definitely something I think you should look into. And there are a lot of travel insurance plans you can get that will cover like all your travels for the whole year. That's the kind that I use. Okay, here's something you might not think about, but remember, in the Mediterranean, it does get hot. Like seriously, really hot. So I just want to remind you to pace yourself, take it easy. Yes, this might be the only time you get to see Naples, but make sure you have realistic expectations for what you can do in a day. Drink a lot of water, take breaks, and make sure you have your sunscreen on. You don't want to spend one day of your 7-day cruise in bed with heat stroke or a hangover. So if you're enjoying all that Italian wine, just remember, pace yourself and drink water. Another thing I've been asked about several times is how much cash do I think people should bring? And my answer to that is usually, honestly, you don't really need any cash. Nowadays, just about every place takes credit cards, and I have my credit card in my phone, so I'm just tapping my phone on everything. I might have around 50 euros cash in my wallet at all times, but I think the bills that I have in my wallet right now have probably been in there for several weeks, if not months, because I just try to pay with my debit card or my credit card everywhere I can. It's so convenient. I think the only time as a traveler that I feel like I need cash is either for the casino on the ship or for tipping people on the ship or the tour guides or bus drivers on the tours. But so the days where you need to bring like a traveler's check for 2,000 cash that you had to cash in at a bank here, and then you had that like stuffed in your bra so nobody would steal it, those days are over. Don't bring 2,000 cash with you. Okay, you had an amazing time in Santorini, some fantastic pizza in Naples, you're disembarking in Chevy Chase, and you gotta get to the airport. Don't cut it close with your return flight after the cruise. Just like the distance from the city to the coast, a lot of these airports are not really close to where the ship docks. It's not like Miami or Fort Lauderdale. You can't get from the port to the airport in 15 minutes. So when you're planning your flight home, if you're going to be flying home the day that the cruise ends, I would say never choose a flight that leaves before 1:30 in the afternoon. Of course, this might mean if everything goes smoothly that you're gonna have like 3 or 4 hours hanging out at the airport, but isn't an extra hour hanging out at the airport better than stressing about or even just missing your flight home? If you ask me,
I think the answer is yeah.
I could probably go on and on about advice and ways to make your Mediterranean cruise better, but I'm gonna wrap it up for this video. If you think there are some important things that I missed or some things that I got wrong, make sure to let me know in the comments. Next week at this time, I'll be boarding the Norwegian Viva and sashaying into my penthouse in the Haven. So make sure you're subscribed and check back soon for that. Follow me on Instagram at Mr. Morgan O'Brien or check out the Facebook page for the Very Unofficial Travel Guides to get daily updates, and I look forward to seeing you back here soon. I'm Morgan from the Very Unofficial Travel Guides. Bye-bye.